Good morning and welcome to Ed's World, where it's always morning, even in the afternoon. I am your host, Jay Edgar, and I'm joined by kind of a newcomer over to the community here. He calls himself Silentcaster. I call him Kevin, but welcome on over, Silentcaster, to Ed's World.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hey, it's not a problem. Thanks for coming by, and thanks for checking us out, everybody here. Before we get started, I want to make a little bit of an announcement that I have here, a little bit of an anecdote, if you will, like I like to start the program on, and that is the fact that those of you who follow my Twitter already know this fact because I put the picture out there, but because I don't always go to the mailbox all the time, finally opened up my mailbox after a few weeks and had 3 birthday cards in there, a couple bills, which I paid online, which I don't know why they don't go paperless, but I also had that mysterious little letter that came from the federal government that all the rest of you know about. I got my Trump bucks today. And as all of you that are on Twitter already know, it is in 4 pieces right now and going on its way back to the government because you are not going to make inflation over on my name. You're going to inflate the currency anyway, but you're not going to do it over me. So that was fun. I enjoyed cutting up a government document. I really did. I thought it was quite funny. And I enjoyed writing the letter that is going back to them. I think that's a lot of fun. Did you get your Trump bucks?
Did I?
Yeah.
I did. Yes.
I'm guessing that you probably didn't cut them up like I did.
I didn't. I haven't spent them, but I didn't. I didn't. I had the direct deposit a long time ago, so you know.
Yeah,
You know,
I don't trust the government with my bank account information. If they can put shit in there, they can take it back out, and I don't care for the government.
that's fair. No, that's completely fair.
Anyway, we've got a lot to get to today. We are going to talk COVID, and it's a waning news story, so hopefully we're not going to spend an hour talking about it like we have in every other show for the last 6 weeks. But we've got some stuff going on here. My state has opened back up. We are going back out there in certain counties. Some counties are still closed, but we'll talk about what happened there and listen to what Tony Evers had to say about all of this and why it happened there. Um, there's a new stimulus bill that's coming out. We'll talk a bit about everything that was in there. Fauci testified in front of the Senate, and we'll talk a little bit about what's happening there. Thunberg was on CNN. We'll talk about her. And the lack in employment has caused an increase in OnlyFans, and I've already made my thoughts on that clear on Ed Talk here, but we'll talk a little bit about what Kevin has to say about that and what we think is going to be the future of this. And that's going to be the first half of the show. In other news, we'll talk about 2020, Justin Amash dropping out, the special elections from the past week and what they may shape on the upcoming election here, and the statistics going into this with Biden falling to a 4.3% lead in national polling, and even MSNBC saying that he might be done at this point. The Obamagate situation is going on. There was a declassified document showing the names of certain Obama staffers. We'll talk a bit about that and what's going on with there. And Trump demanded testimony from Obama in the Flint case, so we'll see what happens there. Everybody in the world is talking about Ahmaud Arbery and everything that happened with that, so we'll talk a bit about what's going on there. Not a lot of developments there, but a little bit of what's going on with the future and what we saw from the week. And finally, case of trans athletes in Connecticut has caught the attention of some media people and possibly could define whether or not competition is going to be happening between biological men and biological women and what that could do for our regular society. It's going to be all of this and more over on Ed's World. Thanks for taking the time to check us out. We are streaming live over on YouTube, DLive, Twitch, Periscope, and Facebook. And if you're on Facebook, head on over into one of the live streams that are linked in the description above you because otherwise we can't see your live chat and we really would love to answer your questions, so go and check us out there. We are also partnered with the Freedom Scoop Media Group, so you can check out all of our back catalogs there. You can check out other great creators like The Generational Gap, like Freckles and Britt, Wyatt Birkenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, and Stephen Ignoramus. All these great people, other than Wyatt, stream today, so you can go and check all of them out on the back catalog or any of the other days that they're streaming. You'll find links to all of their programming as well, so go and check them out. And if you can't catch us live, or you're just catching up now and you want to check us back out on demand, you can find us on demand over on YouTube and over on BitChute.com. Or You can always find us over on the audio platforms. We are on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. And if you're over on iTunes, leave us that 5-star rating and a good review. That helps us move up the charts. After the lengthy introduction, it is time to find out about the most important part of Ed's world. So, Kevin, you're kind of new to this, but a few people know who you are as well. But tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am known on Twitch as Silentcaster. I'm, kind of I'd say a pretty small streamer, but I have recently just started a talk show back a few months ago, monthly talk show that just covers some current events and whatnot. But mostly what we do on my channel is gaming, speed runs, retro stuff. That's what we mostly do. But I that's pretty much the extent of my social media and whatnot. I'm pretty boring. I work, in HR, and other than that, yeah, that's about it for me.
Well, you talked about gaming here. What are you currently playing on your channel?
So my two big speed runs right now are Resident Evil Code Veronica and Clock Tower 3. But I do a lot of other retro gaming, like Final Fantasy Tactics challenge stuff, along with just blind plays of certain games. So yeah.
A lot of different stuff then. Definitely go and check that out. That is linked down in the description below if I could actually talk today. But we talked a little bit off mic here on how it was that you decided that you wanted to go off the gaming side and even dabble your feet into a little bit of the alternative media side and what we're seeing in the news and shows like this. And you like you said, you do a monthly talk show on news and topics. I actually ran across you because you were interviewing somebody who's been on this show numerous times, Harvey McLeod. But tell us a bit about how you got into that realm of things.
So I have been seeing over the years, past specifically last 5 years, but even before that, how YouTube has been slowly, YouTube and big tech in general has been slowly clamping down on, more conservative, right leaning, even some left leaning voices. And I've seen how the media treats Trump. I mean, I'm not the hugest Trump fan, but I would say it's far more unfair to Trump. But granted, he does fight back and do a lot of things like that.
He says stuff.
What's that?
He says stuff.
Yes, he does, and he tweets stuff. And so what I said was, I am gay, and so I said, as someone who is gay and doesn't go along with a lot of the leftist crowd, a lot of the propaganda that comes out of it, maybe my voice is needed to have a little bit more depth to it. I'm not super far right. I'm not completely conservative, but I do have right leaning views for the most part, and so I figured it would be something that I could dip into while I'm while I have the chance still, and at a critical time.
Well, you'll find around this channel, a lot of us are pretty well mostly libertarians, so we don't so much care what it is that you do. We just want you to be free and do what it is that you love to do. So we're all friends here. Just out of curiosity, just to step it back one more step here, how did you get into gaming and doing this game streams online? Because that possibly is where you started with all of this.
Yeah, actually, I was part of a Final Fantasy Tactics like hacking crowd back. We did a lot of different hacks with the game, just made it more difficult or put certain things in the game, took them out to just to change it. And so one of the things that we did were matches on Twitch, and we always used, I always went to Twitch to watch these matches, but then I was like, oh, there's other things that people do on Twitch. Like they there's other things that they do. So I started like looking at other games that I liked, and just started getting into it. So I won't say I was always a gamer, but there's a lot of retro stuff that I was into gaming a long time, and I got out of it. And then I started having more free time once I moved to Florida, and decided to kind of go back into it. So
Perfect. Well, thanks for coming by. Thanks for sharing that with us here. Before we get into the news here, we're going to check in with the live chat for the first time out here. So let's see who we got going on over here. We've got Ron Helton over on D Live with the sticker party. If you guys are not on D Live, we've got so many stickers over there, and I think Ron has touched all of them at some point here. And you can't see them on Twitch. They don't translate through the Restream bot, but they're there and they're pretty awesome. So go check that out. Looks like we've got Albie and Heart over here with some heart emojis up in here, and Kopachi and Albie and Heart both have some emotes from Twitch that I'm not completely recognize. I'm not that big into Twitch culture, unfortunately, so I can't recognize everything. Maybe you can help me out a little bit with this one here.
oh, looks like they are emotes from a couple of Resident Evil streamers. Well, Resident Evil streamer Rufus, and then Abomination. He has numbers at the end. I can't remember, but it's he does Final Fantasy IX mostly.
Ron's got some more stickers here. Looks like Harvey McLeod is over here as well, checking us all out. I guess you didn't know that you were going to be on the screen on this stream, but yeah, absolutely. I reached out after you were on his show, so got the conversation going on over here. Ron's got more stickers out here. Man, this guy's got stickers. He's got stickers out of this. And you guys, if you do want to go over and check out DLive, I highly recommend it. I'm going to be opening the chest, which is full of cryptocurrency, especially since nobody claimed it last week. So there's going to be a lot of lemons flowing around there. And if you want to get your hands on them, I would suggest getting on over to DLive for that. That's going to be at the end of the show. So go ahead and check that out. And we are going to get into the news. So first and foremost, and this because this is a show based in Wisconsin, this is where we got to start out here, and that is the fact that Wisconsin is officially open up. As of last Thursday, after a deliberation on a 4-3 decision, the Supreme Court found Tony Eber's order to remain shut down through May 26 to be unconstitutional per the state constitution, and ordered it immediately removed, therefore allowing Wisconsin to open up without restriction. Now, several counties have jumped back in, and several municipalities as well have jumped in to put restrictions back in place at a local level. But for the most part, the state is open for business. Have you read anything on this so far?
I have actually. I was reading and researching it a little bit. It looks like Milwaukee County, I guess, closed back down almost immediately after. And it seems like a lot of places, even though there are really no restrictions that are required to be in place, a lot of places are putting a lot of restrictions in place. So I have read about it. I know that the governor is not happy, and I know that the Supreme Court did rule in Wisconsin, or the judge in Wisconsin. The courts in Wisconsin ruled 4-3, so I do know that it was a pretty close decision there. So,
well, and that is an excellent point that you bring up there. The fact that some businesses are operating with restrictions. First off, it's not just Milwaukee that's closed down. Dane is closed down still, which, given the fact that it's liberal Madison, you wouldn't be surprised with that. My county, Rock County, is actually still shut down at this point. They've got countywide decisions on there, and a couple of them up on the west end of the state are still shut down. But for the most part, they're getting back up and they're opening back up. And looks like, let me get the pictures up here. Looks like we did get some images and some things here. This is from a bar called Nick's over in Platteville, which is a college town over on the west side of the state, where pretty much as soon as everything opened back up, people were out gathering, drinking, and being social with each other. They haven't had the opportunity to be social in months, and now they're taking the opportunity and sitting down and interacting with each other, which this morning I said that's what restores my faith in humanity. The fact that they can get the fear porn shot right up into their veins and they still want to go out and interact with each other. So what are you seeing on that?
I mean, the thing is that with the lockdowns, there really wasn't an aversion to the virus. I mean, the virus is incredibly contagious, and so when we talk about having people or having a lockdown, there was too many people infected with the virus in order to really contain it or protect people, the population at large. So what ends up happening is what the lockdown's purpose really was to serve was to not have the health system overloaded, the healthcare system. So what they it's not a surprise to me that people are going out and conversing and enjoying, being out, because they're really being locked down, without too much of a purpose anymore. The healthcare system has had its bulk for the most part. There may be subsequent outbreaks, but at that level, you can start to control, on a local basis, extra outbreaks, and whatnot. Uh, do you want to be as close as that? I mean, that's debatable. As close as those people were. I mean, if one person in there had it, there's probably a lot of people that left with it. But
Yeah.
I do think that things need to start opening up. Did I get lost? No, I didn't get lost. I do think that things need to start opening up for sure.
Well, that's a part of you're absolutely right. People, you said if one person in there got it, looks like probably everybody else does, but that was part of the risk that they brought on themselves. They're deciding for themselves what the acceptable risk is rather than the government telling them to do that for them. And that's what I agree with. Is the whole thing with the government. Because the government
Oh,
doesn't they don't have any business telling you what sort of risk you are there to incur.
absolutely. And the thing is when you give power to the government, it's not going to relinquish it just
Yeah.
because they, you know, I mean, look at the Patriot. I mean, we might get into that, but look at the Patriot Act. I mean, who instituted that? Bush, and every president since, has done extensions or whatnot on many of the provisions in that act.
Hmm.
So why would the government decide to relinquish control? I mean, what if we have a second wave in the fall? They're just going to close everything down again indefinitely? No, just I don't agree with it. So.
Well, and like you said, it does come down to a matter of either personal responsibility and personal risk assessment, or the other side of it is the businesses are deciding what their risk assessment is. I went up to Madison today. Just I haven't had Chick-fil-A in a while, and I got done with a lot of the work for this show today early. So I said, you know what, I'm gonna have Chick-fil-A for lunch. Madison's probably about a 40-minute drive from here. And while I was up there, I spent some time. I went to my old job. I used to work in Madison. Now, same company I work for now. It's just the stark difference between the location I work at and the one in Madison, where work at, we're still pretty much open. We're only allowing two customers in the building at a time, but you can still come in and out freely, no matter what you want to do. Just kind of respect the distance side of it. Whereas in Madison, they have signs all over the place, chains up in front of every door, signs all over the place saying, "Call this number to let us know you're here, and we'll let you in. And you're not allowed in until we let you in." Same company, just that much of a difference based on locality and customer base.
Hmm. Yes. Yeah. Um,
How's the reopening
it,
effort down by you?
well, here in Florida, I would say that people are starting to go back. DeSantis did lift the stay at home order for the vast majority of Florida, with the exceptions being the southeastern counties of Miami-Dade and the other one, but in Broward, I believe. But the the state has been opening up a little bit more every week. So a couple weeks ago, we had restaurants able to reopen, and a few different centers, and then last week we had uh, salons and tattoo parlors and whatnot. Like those could reopen, but they had restrictions on them. And then I think this week they were going. DeSantis was talking about opening the gyms at a reduced capacity. So they are, he was releasing something every week so far, for the reopening efforts. But uh, I think people have been responding positively. I mean, there's more people out. It never really got to a place where they had chains on the doors here, but because DeSantis was very, very reluctant for a long time to do a stay-at-home order at all. But now it's more so just much looser restrictions for most of the state.
Well, I know with Wisconsin, Evers had to weigh a lot of things here because he had the upcoming election there that they consider to be tantamount and important, not necessarily the primary that everybody across the country heard about, but there was something down ballot that they had to make sure that they were doing, and Evers had to balance having lockdown power and making sure that election actually went off, and that was the state Supreme Court race to take a Scott Walker appointee back up off the bench. Dan Kelly ran against a Madison progressive, Jill Karofsky, and she wound up winning because Sanders, and that was part of the reason too, and I was so mad about that because Sanders stayed in. He dropped out the day after the election happened, but it still took him a week to count because of the absenteeism for the COVID relief.
Mm-hmm.
So they still had to wait a week until all the ballots came in to count them all. And because Bernie stayed in, he dropped out the very next day because he wanted to drive out the vote so people would look down ballot and go vote for Karofsky.
Yeah. The Bernie dropping out and endorsing Biden almost immediately is a completely different issue than I think it really revealed who he was to a lot of his followers in general. He did it to play to a lot of people, and I think we're going to talk about this, but I think that some of the progressive, a lot of the progressive base just isn't going to show up for a lot of these elections. I think that one of the special elections they didn't show up, and that's exactly why the district was flipped. But we'll talk about that.
Yeah, we'll be talking about that down the list here. I do, going back to what you said at the beginning, that Evers was not happy about that. I've actually got a short video clip here of what Evers had to say from over on MSNBC. If you'll indulge me here, let's flip that over here and see what that sounded like.
Joining us now, Tony Evers, the governor of Wisconsin. Governor, good to see you again. Thank you for making time for us tonight. The Supreme Court, in its ruling, has said that it was not challenging your power to declare emergencies, quote, but in the case of a pandemic which lasts month after month, the governor cannot rely on emergency powers indefinitely. This is a legal argument that I think the entire nation is looking at because we have sort of decided our governors are the ones who are going to take the evidence and make decisions about whether we stay home or go back to work based on the best information they can get. And your court is saying you can't in this environment.
Yeah, it was four members of the court who made a decision that wasn't based on statute, precedents, or the facts, unfortunately. And the sad thing about it, Allie, is that we have been working very hard over the past several weeks and months in the state of Wisconsin. The people of Wisconsin have stuck to it, staying at home, making sure that they're doing the physical distancing, all the stuff that's important. We've been making good progress. We're one of the lowest number of cases per capita in the Midwest. We're doing the right things. And unfortunately, in this one fell swoop, 4 judges who didn't really care about what the statutes talk about have thrown our state into chaos. And that is such a sad thing for the state of Wisconsin. We've worked so hard. The people of Wisconsin have worked so hard to have this chaotic situation at this point in time.
So this would be very worrisome if you're in Wisconsin, because what you're looking for is the best information, the best guidance on how to stay home or reopen on a staged basis. What the court is saying is that you now have to work out political issues with the legislature. How does that actually work in practical terms? Because there was a stay-at-home order. Does that go away? Do you have the ability to make interim orders or orders that expire after a short amount of time? What happens next for Wisconsin?
We're in the Wild West, Allie. There are no restrictions at all across the state of Wisconsin. The Tavern League in this state has sent messages, emails to their members saying, we're open tonight. So at this point in time, there is no orders. There's nothing that's compelling people to do anything other than having chaos here. And of course, people are smart in Wisconsin. They're not idiots. They're going to do whatever they can to make sure that they're safe. But when you have no requirements anymore, that's a problem. And we're just leaving it open. We're going to have more cases. We're going to have more deaths. And it's a sad occasion for the state.
So that's what Evers had to say about that, and I don't know if you saw all the gestures I made to that, because that was. I can't stand Tony Evers. He is just a teachers union shill. That's all he is. That's all he ever has been. But hey, turn your mic back on.
I apologize. Here's the thing. He is. They want to talk about how the people of Wisconsin are so smart, and he says they're doing such a great job. And what he fails to mention is that what he's implying by making those statements is he's implying that the people of Wisconsin are doing a wonderful job because I'm babysitting them, because I'm making them do a wonderful job. Well, no, the people of Wisconsin were just in a lockdown where you would go and, basically arrest them or give them a hard time. And it's not that they're doing a great job. They have no choice but to do a great job because you're going to invoke state rule. The problem is that that's not sustainable. The argument is not sustainable. You can't. It's only going to work for so long. Even if we throw economics out the window. I mean, really, it does come back to economics, because what happens is you devalue your money not only in a value sense, but in a psychological sense, where your money can buy less and less and less. And so what that does is it essentially makes it so that the government's not going to help you recoup debts at that point. So you have no recourse. So it's an unsustainable position what he's taking, but he's just trying to say, well, it's not my fault, and just distance himself from the courts. And I don't buy it personally.
Well, let's look at the other end of this, because we actually do have a kind of concrete example of what could be happening on the other side of this, because Mayor Eric Garcetti has decided that Los Angeles and the greater Los Angeles County area is going to stay locked down now through at least July at this point, he has stated, which he's also stated that it's going to be indefinite because they're not going to open back up until they have 0 cases in LA County, which that by itself is unsustainable, because you're always going to find cases. This is especially we have a second wave coming. You're going to keep finding cases more and more. It does come to the idea of what is your acceptable risk. What have you seen in Los Angeles so far?
So reading about Los Angeles, they're just talking about how they can go pretty much indefinite with the orders. The other state, the surrounding parts, they said, they're just going to keep extending the orders. They have end dates, but with Los Angeles, it's just no end date. But not only that, but Garcetti was one of the ones that was also, had his little hotline where, you could call and, complain to whoever. And it's gotten to the point where they can't even control. I mean, they're going out to the beaches and whatnot, and they're trying to arrest people, and they just don't have the resources. So as this happens more and more and more, well, I shouldn't say they're arresting, but, giving them fines and heckling them and whatnot. As it starts to happen more and more and more, it becomes unsustainable, because even people that are for the lockdown slowly wane as they want to start going outside, going to the beach, going back to work, whatever their case may be. Not being heckled when they go to the store, not having their neighbor call on them, if they leave the house too many times a week to go to the grocery store. These are all factors that people take in, and it's just an unsustainable position to continue to want this lockdown, when the people that are at risk can essentially protect themselves.
Well, and sorry, I had a chuckle in the beginning when you were talking about the snitch line that they have down in Los Angeles, because I remember when de Blasio had his out and the number was advertised nationwide, and there is a better than 50% chance that Mayor de Blasio has seen my junk. There is a better than 50% chance of that. I'm sorry.
I like it.
But
funny,
to go back onto this though, some of this is punitive, and we're seeing some of this come from other governors and governesses. Chancellor Whitmer has not said outright, but has very strongly implied the fact that that her extending the lockdown measures are punitive, because she said that if they keep protesting, she's going to have to lock down Michigan longer and longer, and that treads into some very dangerous territory, especially in our English-based system of jurisprudence. What do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I'm actually originally from Michigan, and so it's interesting because the electorate there and the people there, it's a solid blue in Detroit, and then as you kind of emanate out from Detroit, it starts to become more red. And so it's basically, you just have this cluster in and around Detroit that's blue, and then you got like Flint and Saginaw and whatnot that are also kind of blue. But for the most part, Michigan's, everywhere else is pretty solid red. And the thing is like Lansing is kind of one of those redder areas, like the surroundings of Lansing. So it's funny because you see all of the, what they always want to do is they always want to depict the people that are, carrying Confederate flags, saying they're not protesting, they're not social distancing, when most of the people are, and they're doing it, peacefully and whatnot. They know that, they essentially have to protest in a certain way to get Whitmer to listen. But when you just watch Whitmer's reaction when she does interviews and whatnot, she's got this like little smirk on her face. She was wearing that t-shirt with what is it, that lady from Michigan or whatever that Trump called her. And the thing is that she's very much, I believe that she actually is happy to do this. Like she does not mind, and the media seems to think that a lot of people love her, and they say, everybody in Lansing loves her. Well, that's not really true. It's just that, they hype it up to be true, but it's not. It's really not true. So.
Well, yeah, and that does come with that's the idea of freedom there, and I'm willing to bet there's a chance that Garcetti is doing the same thing, because we're seeing protests left and right here and there on all of this as well. And I don't think he's going to be the one that comes out and says, yes, I'm going to do this to punish you. But, if it's sitting there in the back of his mind on the other side of it, I could definitely see that coming from him. I do have to ask, though, how is it that I keep running across all of you Michigander expats that have moved to other parts of the country? I've got Steven, who is a Michigander expat. I've got Jessica Green, who's been on this show, is a Michigander expat, and now you. I keep finding you people. I didn't even know that.
For me, like I left Michigan just because of the weather. I mean, it was mostly the weather. I've actually lived in Texas and now Florida. But when I last lived in Michigan, it's just it really went. Unfortunately, it really went downhill when the automotive industry took a hit. Quite a few years back. It really went downhill and has never fully recovered. I mean, so especially living in the Detroit metro area, you really see the effects of what happened there. So,
well, we got to keep moving along here. We're going to start running up on the clock here if we keep going full throttle into COVID here. So the next thing I want to talk about here is this is the HEROES Act that just passed down through the House. So the House has released a $3 trillion bill, and it is just loaded with pork. Just reading from the notes that I have here, provisions for federal election control, which is unconstitutional, and a lot of diversity programs. But I do want to take and read from a little bit of Green Check certified news here. So from Fox News, House passes $3 trillion coronavirus relief expensive bill in history. This is from Marissa Schultz. The House of Representatives on Friday evening passed the $3 trillion relief bill, the most expensive. It's in the title. You don't have to put that in the first paragraph. The record-breaking bill narrowly passed by a 208-199 vote. 14 Democrats defied their party and voted no. They're going to get a talking to from Pelosi later. While one Republican, Pete King of New York, broke with the GOP and voted yes. I am thrilled, House Speaker Pelosi said after the bill's passage. I'm so proud of my members. They just did something monumental for the American people, for their healths, for their lives, for their livelihoods, and for our democracy. We couldn't be more thrilled. Have you read any of this bill? I'm probably 200 pages into it right now, and it's 1,815 pages.
I've read a lot of articles surrounding the bill. I haven't read a lot of the bill myself, though.
It is huge and very dry. Very, very dry.
I imagine so. I know that part of it is another round of $1,200 checks for people, up to 6,000 depending on how many kids you have and whatnot. And then I know that there are provisions for state relief. A lot of that, I believe, universities and schools in general. I don't know if I know they were talking about it, but I don't know if the USPS portion got in there or not.
It did.
It did not. Okay.
It did. It did.
Oh, it did. Okay. So I know that there was trying to provide relief for that. I know that it was going to be dead on arrival going to the Senate because they already just passed a $2 trillion spending bill. If they pass this, you're talking $5 trillion, which is more than the government spends an entire year on two bills that are about a month apart from each other. So,
yes, and that was part of because I wrote a letter when I cut up my stimulus check. I wrote a letter to go with it, and that was one of the things that I pointed out was the fact that we operated last year on a $1 trillion deficit, and we haven't had any increase in tax receipts yet. So we can't run like this. We just can't do it unless you start printing money out of thin air, and that's going to devalue our currency further than it already is.
Oh, absolutely. And, a lot of people don't realize, okay, you have to, you're getting this money and, it can help you through this or that, but somebody has to pay it back. Who's going to pay it back? Well, the only place they can get it is where they're already getting 80% of the tax revenue, which is, the upper class. That's going to collapse, them. And it's not going to be good. I'll tell you that.
Well, some of the other things that went into this, of course, there were provisions that had no reason being in a relief bill. One of these provisions was a repeal of the SALT portion of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act from 3 years ago. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the SALT portion of that, it is the state and local taxes provision, which meant that you no longer could deduct your state and local taxes from your income before paying into your federal taxes. Now, this was a little bit of a boon to some of us. Of course, in places like Texas, this was a real bonus to them because nothing changed for them because they don't have any state and local taxes. But places that are heavily taxed, like New York and California, suddenly actually took a pretty massive tax hit because of that, because there was not a lot that they could write off of that. What do you think about that idea?
I mean, that state and local taxes are deductible, and it hurt the states that were heavily into the taxes.
Well, the fact that they're trying to repeal it.
I mean, it's basically just neoliberalism. 101. It's that they want to essentially take state and local taxes. The problem is that state and local taxes are going to mostly affect upper class people. A lot of people don't notice it at the lower class. But the fact is that it's still robbing them. it's still affecting them, because the people that are landlords and whatnot are always going to just pass down that money to people that are renters, or people that are, buying the goods that essentially feed them. So they don't. I think it's just more of, it looks good to people on paper, to have the state and local taxes, but essentially it really does affect, and it inflate the local currencies, inflate property values, which makes, which gives less land to lower class people and whatnot. So do I think it's a good idea to repeal that? No.
Well, one of the other things that they also tried to stick into this bill, because their new pet project is going to be mail-in voting, which we'll talk a lot more about that when we talk about the election, but they tried to sneak this into this bill, and even if it made it past the Senate and the president's desk at this point, it wouldn't make it past the Supreme Court. To make it past the Supreme Court, it would have to be constitutional, and that good old Article 2, Section 1 says that they can't do that. They can't take federal control out of the election. That's against the law.
Yep. But they, at this point, they're trying to, a lot of the states are signing a bill to repeal the Electoral College. I mean, they do not like the fact that there are checks and balances to, every election. And the fact is that we are a republic, not a democracy. So people feel that, California and New York should essentially decide elections. And, whatever the popular vote is what's good for the rest of the country. But that's not true. That doesn't create, good business. Imagine, there's so many businesses, for example, that move to Texas and Florida even, and, to escape higher taxes and to, essentially get more benefits and more out of their money. Well, if California, New York decided everything for them, then there would be no point in moving anywhere, because you would just have pretty much neoliberalism ruling all the business, which is going to eventually lead to a soft socialism. So,
all right, we got to keep moving along here because we're running up on doing an hour on COVID again. But let's talk about. I got a picture up here actually. Let's get that set up here. So, what do you think about this idea that some of these restaurants that have just opened back up are having a small, usually looks like not even 1%. Well, no, it is more than 1%, but it's like maybe, I can't do the math in my head right off the hand. Maybe
about 5%.
Yeah, about 5% COVID-19 surcharge up here. And I do understand the fact that some of these people do need to do this for survival, because they went for so long without an income. And they're upfront about, they've got signs on the door. The places that are doing this do have signs on the door saying that they are going to have a temporary COVID-19 surcharge to try and recoup some of the losses. But some people are bulking, and some of the people that are bulking at this are coming from out of the states of these restaurants. I know one restaurant in Texas was getting calls from California and Washington State about the fact that they had the COVID surcharge. So, first off, what's your thoughts on the fact that they're doing this?
I think that the proper way to do it is just to add, is just to raise your prices a little bit. And if people ask, then say it's due to, it's just due to the extra restrictions that we have to take. I don't really like that they have an extra line item, because then, it just essentially gives the customers a reason to be upset or to kind of take issue with it.
I understand that thought of that, but one of the other sides that I'm back and forth on this. I don't know whether I think it's the proper thing to do or not, but to your side of it, you actually hit the same point that I do on the con side of it. But on the pro side of it, a lot of these businesses, if you add a little bit to your prices, it's usually a permanent thing. It usually never comes back down. The fact that they're adding it as a surcharge means that they do intend to take it away at some point. So that's the pro side of it to me. It could go either way on my end of it. I've been in the restaurant business before. I do understand what they're doing, but our local meat market has a sign out front that says, due to COVID, some prices are going to go back up temporarily, and we do want to get them back down as quickly as possible as soon as the supply chain is open.
No, I guess I completely understand that, but I would say that the movement of the market would just determine if you're priced a little bit higher than competitors who are offering the same thing, then you need to lower your prices. And I think that the market would determine what what prices should be. So yeah, I mean, we could say that they won't go back down, but if it's like that, then we kind of have a comparison of apples to apples among competitors rather than some places charging it, some places not. So.
All right. That's where we're going to stand on that. So another one that I've got here, this has been an interesting one on the mainstream media side of things. Anthony Fauci actually testified in front of the Senate today. It was a remote meeting. He testified from his home because he is currently self-isolating. But he did have some things to say. Of course, we heard some news that Chuck Schumer was kind of briefing him in the beginning of this, but Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky really kind of let him have it while everything else was going on here. Let me get the scene set up here. But yeah, they did have a nice back and forth here, and I respect Rand Paul. I think he actually might have been just a little bit harsh on this, but for the extent of it, it is not necessarily something that Fauci needs to hear, because I think Fauci knows where he stands on everything. I think it was something that a lot of the American people needed to hear, because a lot of them do think that Anthony Fauci is the be-all, end-all. But let's see what that sounded like. This is from C-SPAN. I got the video up here. Let's get it playing.
So really, we do need to be thinking about that. We need to observe with an open mind what went on in Sweden, where the kids kept going to school. The mortality per capita in Sweden is actually less than France, less than Italy, less than Spain, less than Belgium, less than the Netherlands, about the same as Switzerland. But basically, I don't think there's anybody arguing that what happened in Sweden is an unacceptable result. I think people are intrigued by it, and we should be. I don't think any of us are certain when we do all these modelings. There have been more people wrong with modeling than right. We're opening up a lot of economies around the U.S., and I hope that people who are predicting doom and gloom and saying, oh, we can't do this, there's going to be a surge, will admit that they were wrong if there isn't a surge. Because I think that's what's going to happen. In rural states, we never really reached any sort of pandemic levels in Kentucky and other states. We have less deaths in Kentucky than we have in an average flu season. It's not to say this isn't deadly, but really outside of New England, we've had a relatively benign course for this virus nationwide. And I think the one-size-fits-all that we're going to have a national strategy and nobody's going to go to school is kind of ridiculous. We really ought to be doing it school district by school district, and the power needs to be dispersed because people make wrong predictions. And really the history of this, when we look back, will be of wrong prediction after wrong prediction after wrong prediction, starting with Ferguson in England. So I think we ought to have a little bit of humility in our belief that we know what's best for the economy. And as much as I respect you, Dr. Fauci, I don't think you're the end all. I don't think you're the one person that gets to make a decision. We can listen to your advice, but there are people on the other side saying there's not going to be a surge and that we can safely open the economy, and the facts will bear this out. But if we keep kids out of school for another year, what's going to happen is the poor and underprivileged kids who don't have a parent that's able to teach them at home are not going to learn for a full year. And I think we ought to look at the Swedish model and our kids get back to school. I think it's a huge mistake if we don't open the schools in the fall. Thank you.
So that's what Rand had to say there. And I mean, for the most part, I think he's spot on. But once again, I don't think this was necessarily what the American people, or not necessarily what Fauci needed to hear. I think this was what the American people needed to hear. What did you see on this?
Well, when I actually saw the response, it was quite interesting, because what it was more of is because this is what really intrigued me is I think the response to what he said was, well, we don't know, you know, and Fauci mentioned something about children developing a new symptom that was not seen before. And what's interesting is true, but what's also true is the fact what's also true is that they're using the same reasoning of well, we don't know. We don't know what's happening. We don't have enough data. And so we just don't have a time frame. And that's always been the response. That's been the very canned response. And now you can see Fauci is kind of in that same camp. We know what we do know is that we know it's a virus. We know it's going to mutate. We know that certain strands are going to be more potent than others. And we know that it's going to affect populations that are more at risk more than children and not at risk populations. And so gathering more data or seeing where the mutation goes is not really going to be helpful at this point, at least from my perspective, because we already know that we already know a lot about what we do know, and what we don't know what's going to happen. So that's my view on it.
Well, and like I say, Fauci's a doctor. He's obviously going to take the most cautious course to go medically to try and get this out of here, but he's not looking at other sides of this, at the economic side. That's been one of the biggest complaints I've heard all over alternative media from the beginning of this, is the fact that, yes, he does understand he's going to take the most cautious route from the medical standpoint, but now we've got economists here that have to weigh in. We have to weigh several different sides of what this is going to be. And I do think that a lot of people really like Anthony Fauci because he says the things that they think that Trump doesn't want to hear, the things that are going to shut the economy down, and the proof that we need to have everything shut down, no matter what it is that Trump says in his great economy that was going to get him reelected, or whatever excuse that they want to make on this.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Mm-hmm.
And speaking of people who are experts in the field and who are not experts in the field, the next story that we have on the stack here, I've got to read from CNN, is the fact that CNN had a nice little town hall, which they had a few different panelists on there, and one of them was the ever expert panelist Greta Thunberg, a teenager whose big claim to fame is yelling, "How dare you!" So from CNN, teen activist Greta Thunberg is urging the world to listen as two scientists, as she describes the devastating impact of the coronavirus pandemic having around the world. During any crisis, it's always the most vulnerable people who are hit the hardest, and that is children, she said. Especially in the global south, people in the poorest parts of the world, especially people living in conflict zones and refugee camps. And it's interesting to me the fact that she was in there and having this conversation and talking to the people. And of course, we had the media outrage over this that Anderson Cooper could not help but get into the middle of. But she is right to an effect that some of these poor areas of the world are going to have more problems with the children, because in these poor areas of the world with COVID-19, the children are going to have more underlying conditions, the same reason this is having so many problems on the elders. Did you get to see any of this town hall at all?
I didn't get to see the town hall, but I did hear some of her commentary. Mm-hmm. And how I feel about it is they're bringing her in because she's kind of the flavor of the month, and it's kind of sad that they do that. The opponents always say the same thing to they said it about Hogg. They've said it about many activists that are under 18. Oh, they're just children. Well, same thing, CNN. Like you're exploiting Greta Thunberg to get ratings. I mean, admit it. But the sad thing is that what she's saying applies to everything, whether that's hunger, whether that's any disease. I mean, the Ebola outbreak was affecting people in that region much more heavily than it would affect, people here if the same outbreak had occurred, because they don't have the medical staffing, they don't have the resources, they don't have any of that. So I mean, you could replace her, COVID-19 with pretty much any problem, and you would say the same thing. So yes, what she's saying is true, but everything is so much more magnified in those poor areas.
Yeah, that's true. And once again, it doesn't seem that a lot of people are actually dying specifically from COVID as we thought in the beginning of everything. It seems that for the most part it's amplifying what you said, the underlying conditions that we have here, which we're seeing more of those in children. I mean, all of the under 60 deaths, almost all of them that we see in this country had some sort of underlying condition. So when you're in a poorer region of the world where there are more underlying conditions, yes, of course, you're going to have more destruction that goes along with this.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, the last one that I have here, and this is going to be a little bit of a juicy one here. We might, well, yeah, because we were probably about 10 minutes in before we started talking about the news, but we might get out of COVID in under an hour. It's a miracle of modern technology here. But the last thing I want to talk about is the fact that OnlyFans creators, the bigger accounts that have been on OnlyFans forever, are starting to get a little bit angry about the fact that so many other women have discovered that it's an easy way to make money while everybody's out furloughed. Have you seen anything on this so far?
I haven't, but I did say the same thing actually on on my talk show in March, and I said about Twitch. I did say that there were a lot of more people getting on Twitch now, and streams going all the time because they're at home. They're unable to go out.
Well, I actually had a pragmatic solution to this. This actually came to my attention because I saw a Twitter thread where a boyfriend and his girlfriend were sitting back and fighting because he said that she couldn't go on OnlyFans and she went back and did it anyway. And I don't like the idea of OnlyFans. I think it's probably one of the more degenerate ways of things to do. It enables simp culture. It irreparably damages the societal fabric of dating and mating, and possibly goes on to several other things, going on to genetic diversity as we go along down the road. But I don't think the solution is to outright ban it or get rid of it. That's part of the reason that they made OnlyFans, is because Patreon and Snapchat were purging so many people with adult Patreon and premium Snapchats. And I think that the solution to OnlyFans is exactly what they're doing and exactly what these big creators are getting pissed about. Flood the market.
Yeah.
Get as many women on there as you can and make it less of a lucrative business. They'll walk away from it as soon as they realize they can't make their $40,000 or $50,000 a year off of it.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I mean, I like I said, I hadn't heard anything specifically about this, but yeah, I do. But the other thing is like a lot of, I have to imagine that the other side is also growing to an extent. You've got, the men that want to go on there and, they can't get out anymore. They can't go to the strip clubs or the bars or whatever. So they need their entertainment. So I don't know. I don't know how that balances out. It's probably not more going in than going into the industry itself, but.
Well, there's that, but there's also the fact that a lot of the guys are furloughed too, so they don't have the money to throw around on OnlyFans either.
Yeah, that's true.
But it's the problem I had with the OnlyFans is the fact that, I mean, when I was single the last time, I was on Tinder and various other sites were there where, a lot of the girls, they're not going on Tinder to date, they're going on Tinder to go scrounge up interest for their OnlyFans account. Or the classic one I always saw when I was on there was, hey, Venmo me $5 and see what happens. And then they stupidly put their Instagram on there too. And then you go on the Instagram and it says, hey, I just got $75 out of guys that Venmo me to try and find out. Did you think they weren't going to fucking look? Your Instagram is right on the front page, you idiot.
Well, some of them won't look probably, but that's funny.
But yeah, that's the culture there. They're not necessarily to date, they're probably got 3 kids with some major Chad out there, or 3 or 4 different Chads out there, and they're looking for somebody to go out and support themselves, and a bunch of boyfriends to come up and send them money every month.
Yeah. I mean, the family unit is something that I also advocate for, but, and unfortunately, like you said, I these sites should be able to run. They should, they should be able to do whatever they want, and operate, pretty much however they want. It's just, I do advocate for the family unit, but I understand, like I would say I put enterprise before that. So,
yeah. And like I said, the easiest way to get rid of it is just flood the market, get them all out, make it not worth their while to post the pictures.
Exactly.
All right, we are going to go and check in with our horribly neglected live chat here after we've just spent 50 minutes talking about COVID here. And let's see what we have going on with this as well. I've been kind of paying attention to it as we go, but let's see. Kopachi said he heard about it last night, so that's here. Looks like you're in the chat here as well. Ron's got the sticker party going on here. Kopachi says at Silentcaster with an emote. Let's get some conversation going up on here. Oh, we had the Waltons greeting in here. Hi Harvey. Hi Ron. Hello. Hey conservative. Hello John boy. Hello. They're very polite in this, and but it does give me the Waltons vibe when I do this.
Oh, that's good. See, I'm familiar with some of the people on Twitch, but not on the other platforms. So hello, other platforms.
Nephilim Ninja says, but people might die like they do every day. Ron says we must end death on the planet. Only God Emperor Ebers can save us all now. Harvey McLeod says Los Angeles sucks. Poor Ben Shapiro is locked away. Yeah, he has to broadcast from his home. What a shame.
Yep.
What a horrible existence.
I'm sure he'll find solace in something.
I'm guessing old school gamer mama likes my shirt here because she says Fallout with a heart. Yeah, I play Fallout on Tuesday nights, so come on and check me out. Harvey says, y'all hear that a bunch of rich people have fled New York? Yeah, a lot of them actually went up to northern New England, like New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine area. So they all congregated there as soon as they could get out of there. Ron Helton says, I drove a touring bus through LA years ago, too congested for my taste. I had an easier time driving a truck through Mexico City during rush hour. Seawall's here in his biosealed half-track. Harvey asked, what part of Texas?
Oh, she was probably asking me. I lived in Austin.
Okay. There's your answer, Harvey, for that. I know that Harvey was from Texas, too, originally, and now she lives out west.
Yeah, Mm-hmm.
Seawall says Michigan is the north-central version of California. It mentions more weeb than banks or jobs. Probably weed more than banks or jobs. I'm guessing that was mistyped because he talks about weeaboos a lot. The Dark Knight Robin says silent. With an emote I can't see. It's too small for me to see in detail.
Hello, Robin.
Hunter asked us what we were talking about, and that was when we were talking about the Heroes Act. And I think Ron might have silenced him for personal insults, so thanks to the mods out there for keeping everything sane and civil. Sewell says they also don't realize the U.S. is a center-right nation. If we remove the Electoral College, that would what would happen is that blue state Republicans heavily outnumber red state Democrats and may lead to no more Democratic presidents. Harvey says COVID-19 surcharge doesn't look too bad. Ron says that's not right. He just went to his favorite restaurant and left a big tip. Well, not all heroes wear capes, Ron. Then he says, don't disparage Greta. She's a medical expert. Medical expert. Oni Street says, e-thoughts with hearts. It says, Pornhub is more helpful. Generational Gap says, that must be Ron, because if it was John, he would, or not Ron, Robert. Sorry, Ron is the most active chatter in here. I get confused sometimes. That must be Robert, because John will usually come in on his very charming screen name, Iyama Fago. I think it's French. Oni Street says some people call that charity. That's what I call the strip club, is the college students' book funds charity.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Seawall says one step even better: legalize prostitution, a product that offers more than just OnlyFans, thus completely removing their market. That's actually a good idea.
It's something you could do.
Harvey McLeod says the People's Republic of Austin. Seawall says the Heroes Act mentions weed more than jobs. Okay. So that's what he was talking about, was the Heroes Act.
Yeah. Yeah. I did hear that too, that it does mention that a lot.
I'm only 200 pages in, so I cannot confirm. I have 1,600 more pages to go.
That's it. Okay. Well, 100 pages a day by the time, but they already declined it, so denied it, I should say.
All right. So the next up that we have on the news, and we will come back out and check in with a live chat after we get done talking about 2020 here. But the top of the news for 2020 is the fact that the entire election has shifted because Justin Amash, who was going to set to take just massive amounts of the vote, has decided that he is not going to run for president, citing COVID-19 as making it impossible for him to campaign and going around. Which is interesting because he formed his exploratory committee last week while I was interviewing Adam Kokesh, a libertarian candidate for president. And Adam Kokesh had some very, very interesting words to say about Justin Amash, and I think a lot of them were very, very rightly earned. But I've said my piece on Justin Amash, that I think he should have waited until 2024. What's your piece on Justin Amash?
I totally agree. I mean, I think that he is intelligent enough to know that he didn't have a shot. He was probably just trying to take votes from Trump, really, because he's not a Trump fan. And kind of act as a third party. I mean, he knows.
Looks like we're having a little bit of internet issue over on one end or the other.
It was mine. I'm back now. We should be good, right?
Yeah,
I'm good.
I think so. Yeah, it's been happening on and off through the stream, but I can usually pick what you're saying. But this one I couldn't, so we might have to have you repeat what you just said.
Oh yeah, no problem. I was just saying that I think he knew that he stood no chance. It's just that I think he, was one of those orange man bad kind of, take a stand, and he, of course, didn't work out for him. He knew he wasn't going to win. He just wanted to be, siphon some votes away from him. So.
Well, I know that a lot of the people on Twitter that were congratulating him for dropping out were saying that he was only going to take votes away from Biden, which I do see some merit to that statement. I do think that he could take a lot of votes away from Biden more than Trump, because Trump has with all of his faults, he does have a very hardened base.
Yeah.
He absolutely does. And I don't see a lot of that going away, even especially given the fact that his approval actually ticked up a little bit during the COVID crisis when the economy crashed. And by crashed, I mean that the government came out and said you're not allowed to have an economy anymore.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it went down a little bit to about 44, and then it kind of started coming back up in the aggregate. So I think it's at 45.5, or it's closer to 46 now, I believe, something.
In the aggregate, like yeah, he's moving up, definitely.
Yeah. So he was around 40. He was around 47 or a little bit higher than that before COVID broke, and then like I said, he fell a little bit, but he's coming back up now. So
he didn't quite hit 47, because that was what Styx was always saying was the magic number that he has to hit, and that's what Obama was at when he got reelected. So they're saying that 47 is the magic number, but a 47 for Trump is very different than a 47 for Obama, too, you have to realize, because the mainstream media that everybody was listening to at the time pretty much carried water for the entire Obama administration, and that same mainstream media has done nothing but say Orange Man bad for the last 3 years. It's like they're reading from an NPC script over, to cite video game sources.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about it is that the enthusiasm gap is there for, is even stronger than it was in 16. I mean, not that Hillary was, an enthusiasm generator, but she had more enthusiasm behind her than, Biden. She was a woman, and, people like the Clinton economy. And, so, I mean, she had, some things going for her. And Biden, with Bernie having such a fall from grace, I should say, since he was leading the fundraising. He was briefly the leader in the race, until South Carolina. With Bernie having such a fall, the progressives have almost no morale to back someone like Biden, which just leaves you like neolibs and the Southern voters, which the Republicans have a strong hold on anyway. So I don't see any way that, at least right now, there's still months to go. So, but right now, I don't see any way for Trump to lose this one. So,
Even with Justin Amash coming in and shaking everything up the way that he did.
No, I
That was tongue in cheek.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
That was absolutely tongue in cheek because Amash was not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And one thing, I do think Amash would make a good president. I've read his platform. I think he's got his head in the right place. It's just the fact that he's been. I know he ran locally as libertarian, and then he went to GOP when he went to the House. But from a federal optics standpoint, from what he's seen as across the country, he's just like Gary Johnson. He has been a Republican, he's been a libertarian for exactly 5 seconds, long enough to go and try and go after the election.
Yeah.
And that's going to weigh down on that party first off, and it's going to weigh down on his image. It's going to taint him as a libertarian. Whereas what I said in the beginning, if he runs for his House seat again in 2020 and 2022, we will know if the people of Michigan like Justin Amash or if they like the GOP, because that's going to be a stark difference going forward into the election.
Absolutely. Yeah. Who do you think, I know this wasn't on here, but just real quick, who do you think would be the GOP, nominee, if you had to take a guess right now, the nominees for 2024?
2024? That's interesting because Trumpism is going to change a lot of what changed out of this. My biggest fear is, I hope to God we don't get another Bush. Because there's so many parallels between the Trump administration and the Reagan administration that does seem like that would be the only logical place to go if history does repeat itself. God help us we don't get another Bush.
Yeah.
And Mike Pence does make me nervous on that too.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Ted would take another shot at it. God forbid, I think Walker would take another shot at it. But I don't know who would get. It's having Trump in really made this a real wild card race. So it'd be hard to decide who would be the nominee for 2024, just based on current political climate.
Yeah, my two guesses were Nikki Haley and Dan Crenshaw. So
I don't see Nikki Haley gives me that kind of Bush vibe again.
I absolutely agree. But
Harvey's got a good one in the chat. Dan Crenshaw, that one I could see, and he's old enough to do that.
Yeah,
he's really popular too, and the Republican Party's become a populist movement. Then, given the fact that he's popular, he can go on SNL like a boss.
Yep.
And not get booed off the stage as a Republican. I think he could do it. I think Crenshaw could do it.
I do too. I think he's center enough too, where he's not going to frighten away like independents and left leaners who may not like the 2024 candidate. So.
All right. So let's talk about these special elections here. We'll focus on the California one here first because that seems to be the one that's made the most waves out of this. So on a special election this past week, Katie Hill's former seat in California 25 flipped pretty handily to Mike Garcia by the end of it. Before any of the early voting came in, he was up by double digits at this point. Mm-hmm. So his opponent conceded. I cannot think of what her name was right off the top of my head. Christy Smith, that was it. She conceded, so he has officially become the next holder of that seat. And of course, Katie Hill has has definitely cried over this. I went off on that this morning. You were in the live chat. I saw you. You heard that. Because she fucked up, and now the seat's held by a Republican. But what do you take out of this California 25 election, especially given the fact that it's a special election?
Well, first of all, I'm just amazed that she could cry for 3 days. I mean,
I'm pretty sure she was holed up with a staffer or something.
Yeah. I mean, that's a long time to be in a room crying nonstop. But, I digress. What I really found interesting was I think this is foretelling what will happen in the U.S. election, because we all know, one of the people that publicized this is Cenk Uygur when he tried to run in the primary against Christy Smith. And he got a very low percentage of the vote. But I think that, first of all, CA 25 was always kind of like a purple district. And actually, Christy Smith was the winner in the primary over Mike Garcia, because it was like one of those primaries where you could vote for either. So she actually got more votes than him in the primary. So, but I think what happened was that it's the same thing where the progressives that he needed, that Biden's going to need to carry him over the finish line, they didn't come out for Christy Smith. They were jaded because Cenk just went off on her every moment he got, and so they didn't come out, and it basically just gave Garcia an overwhelming victory. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen in the national election.
So that's going to be what happens with the national election. You're talking for the presidency, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
What do you think is the future for this particular seat? Because we're going to be doing this again in 6 months.
I think it's just really going to depend on whether or not how the Democrats can do a platform. If they stick to kind of, I think it's too late to do like a JFK. I don't think they have enough time for that. But if they stick to kind of like a neoliberalism kind of milquetoast, platform where, they can bide it by, I think they'll do a little bit better, at least this election cycle. I do think the progressives are growing in movement. But in this particular seat, I think Garcia has a strong chance, as long as he doesn't have anything too troublesome come up. I think he has a strong chance of winning again.
Well, I know Hill was out there trying to say that the reason that this entire election happened was the fact that her estranged husband, leaked her nudes out, and they sent them straight to the Garcia camp to make sure that he was up there to try and win the seat, and all sorts of other conspiracy theories, conveniently forgetting the fact that she was caught diddling a staffer, and I don't necessarily believe that the two instances were unrelated. I don't want to put too much of the tinfoil on, but I'm pretty positive that Mr. Husband was paid off to get those pictures out there so people wouldn't be focusing on the fact that she was screwing everybody in her office.
Well, I mean that's definitely possible as well. And I think you said on the show this morning, Pelosi went to her and said, "Hey, we need you to resign after voting for Trump's impeachment."
I don't think it was "we need you to resign." It was. I think it was more of a "resign or I'm going to make your life a living hell."
Yeah, and I mean that I think there's a lot of factors that just went into it, and it's quite possible it was a big distraction. That being said, I have, she was pretty milk. I don't think she was that progressive. I think they were kind of very much opposed to. I mean, like I said, I know Cenk even spoke kind of poorly of her in abandoning, in giving up the seat, but and she did endorse Christy Smith over Cenk. So I think that she was just kind of, like I said, kind of a safe Democrat, corporatist kind that just didn't really excite anyone. So I think there was several factors that went into it.
Let's move inland from this then. On the same day, Wisconsin held a special election as well. This was in the far northern part of the state, far, far away from where I'm sitting right now. In the 7th Congressional District, Tom Tiffany, in a Republican +8 district, took the seat by 14 points over Madison Progressive Tricia Zunker. Have you read anything on this one here?
I did. Now, it wasn't too surprising. I think, it was what, 58-42, I believe, something
yes,
very
that is
close
correct.
to that. Yeah. So I was reading on this one, and basically, it didn't surprise me. Like, every publication was saying, like, it's almost certainly going to be taken red. So it's not surprising that this happened. But I mean, again, I think it's the split in the party that is really just going to cost Democrats all over votes. It's except in safe blue districts.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, it was. Just being from the area, knowing what goes on up there, it's not surprising because the real blue strongholds in my state are Madison and Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
Green Bay is not even that bad. Madison and Milwaukee are the big ones, and pretty much everywhere else is fairly red, except a little bit over on the Minnesota border because we've got a lot of union work that goes on over there, and union is a lot of vote blue no matter who. I know that from kind of the household that I grew up in. But up there, up in Iron Mountain region, up in Wisconsin 7, that was pretty safe Republican, but it's the differential that was surprising to most people because it was a double-digit differential in a much closer average district because that's usually, like I said, it's usually an R+8 district.
Yeah.
And I do think that a lot of the people didn't come out just because of the progressive bump. There's not a lot of progressives up there, but still.
Right. They are growing. So, Nancy Pelosi's got her hands full trying to control that part.
But, I mean, the Republicans are excited to go out and vote. That is one thing that we need to understand about this as well. I mean, Nebraska. Didn't Trump break some sort of voting record in Nebraska for the primary for the fact that he's the only one on there that they didn't even need to go out and vote for him?
I believe he did it in several states. He did it in Michigan. He did it in New Hampshire. He did it in didn't he do it in Iowa? I believe he did it in Iowa.
To be fair, in Michigan, New Hampshire, and Iowa, we still had Joe Walsh and Bill Weld on the ticket. I mean, at this point, none of those people are on the ticket, and people are still going out in droves and voting for him. COVID be damned. The fact that they don't need to vote for him be damned. They are making the effort to vote for something in an unopposed election, which is incredible. They're that excited to go out and vote for Trump.
Oh yeah, I mean his approval rating is what, over 90? Like it's very high. Yeah. It's very high and people are excited. I mean, I went to a Trump rally in January and people were standing in line for hours to get in. I mean, we went early and I think that we still got pretty far back in line and the line after I got in just kept wrapping around city blocks. It was pretty wild. So yeah, the enthusiasm is incredible for Trump.
And I do think that is going to carry on into a lot of these House elections. I am 50-50 on whether or not the House flips or not. Because I could see the argument for both sides of it at this point. And the Senate, that was questionable for Republicans coming up in 2020, is no longer questionable to me. I'm looking at some of these districts and some of the excitement behind, or some of these states rather, Senates don't have districts, but some of these states and looking at what they're doing and the way that the droves that people are coming out to vote for Trump in the districts that we initially thought, or the states that we initially thought were vulnerable. I would not be surprised to see, in a race that was supposed to be tight, I would not be surprised to see the Republicans take 2 seats in the Senate. 2 more seats, widen it a little bit further. Which 4 months ago I wouldn't have said that. I would not have.
Yeah. No, yeah, I'm probably looking at it a little more conservative and saying 1. I don't know that the House will flip. I'm still gonna say that that's probably not going to flip, but anything is possible. So we'll see.
Well, speaking of the excitement for people to go out here, Biden has fallen to a 4.3 lead in national polling. Several states coming out here. Now, CNN is still coming out and saying that because of the state polling that they have and everything that they've taken here, Biden does have a clear path to victory in every single state in the union, that he could possibly take every single state in the union. But the Vegas betting odds paint a different story, and even MSNBC came out this past week and said that they might not nominate Biden. He might not be the one that they nominate out for this. Did you see any of this at all?
Well, I didn't see this particular story, but they've been saying it for not MSNBC, but a lot of the pundits have been saying it for quite a while. You've got I can't even think of his name, but H.A. Goodman talking about Hillary Clinton. She's going to be the one. Hillary. She's going to be the nominee. Mm-hmm. And at this point, I almost think they do better nominating Hillary Clinton, because the sustainability that Biden has. I mean, he is the front runner for pretty much the entire primary, but for South Carolina. And I'll just as a tangent real quick, I think what really solidified him was not Biden himself, but Mike Bloomberg pointing out to soft Bernie supporters, hey, the world's most famous socialist, or USA's most famous socialist, has 3 houses and is a millionaire. Mm-hmm. What's up with, he did poorly in that debate, but that line resonated with a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely.
For soft Bernie support. And it just happened to be right before South Carolina. So, I think it suppressed Bernie support a little bit. I mean, who thought Biden was going to win Massachusetts, honestly? But we had a lot of that. And I think that Biden winning was kind of just because, off of Bernie's failure to maintain the lead. So I can absolutely see them replacing him with somebody. It could be Hillary, but I don't think that would be smart. But with somebody a lot more charismatic, that's definitely possible.
So, because you brought that up, I actually have to ask this. What do you think that does? Because, of course, the Democrats have democracy right in their name. That's a big thing for them, is the fact that they support democracy. They're Democrats. Everything has to be democratically done and democratically controlled. What do you think that does to the party and party morale once all of a sudden their nominee is appointed and not elected?
I don't think it really... honestly, I think it depends on the positions. It could excite, depending on who it is, like if it's somebody like a Warren or somebody like that, it could excite progressives a little bit, which could get them out, at the cost of a few of the neoliberals. But if you choose someone kind of safe that's also has progressive tendencies, you could get somebody a little bit more milquetoast in there that doesn't scare off your neoliberal base, but it does bring in some of the people that weren't excited to vote for Biden. I don't think they really. I think a lot of the Democrats feel jaded about the democracy anyway. I mean, look at Iowa. The caucuses went heavily in favor for Bernie and Buttigieg. Like almost nobody showed up for Biden. Same with Nevada with Bernie. So any place that has a caucus would probably say no, we're fine. We don't need Biden in there. And I don't think it's that much of a stretch to say this guy's just not really cut out for the job. Look at his live streams. Look at his his speeches. I mean, they're all just. I don't think it's that much of a stretch.
Have you listened to his podcast?
I've seen snippets. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I've seen snippets of it, and it's pretty.
I subscribed right at the beginning of it.
Mm-hmm.
It is as bad as you think it would be. I have listened to every episode thus far.
Yeah.
Wow. I've never seen Jay Inslee kiss somebody's ass so hard.
Yeah. No, they're trying to paint this picture that I don't. Biden is not the Biden of 8 years ago. He's not the Obama Biden. He's completely different at this point.
All right. Well, when we move out of this topic, I always ask 3 questions to the guests, and it's always the same 3 questions, but I did just change them up because the primaries are pretty much over on the Democratic side, although I might change them up for next week because now that we're saying that they... Actually, I'm going to try out a new one here. So, for 3 questions, the first one is going to be, who do you think statistically, based on what we've seen in the news and possibly just smart politics out of this, who do you think Biden picks for his vice president?
I think I think he'll probably go with Whitmer.
I kind of think that's where the smart money is myself, on just based on the fact that the media is propping her up so hard.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's talk about Harris and Abrams and a bunch of other people, but nobody knew who Whitmer was before she gave the State of the Union speech, and now she's on every third newscast.
Yeah, exactly. And not only that, but it's strategically, at least by the old playbook, it's strategically the right move to make. So.
All right, new question then for the week, and this will be the first. You're the first one to answer this question.
Oh.
If they do decide to yank Biden at the last minute and appoint somebody else in this place, strategically, who do you think that they put in? Because you mentioned milquetoast neoliberal. Who do you think they put in?
They probably want someone that would go good against Trump. I couldn't go. I mean, I think Kamala Harris would be a second choice, but at this point, I think that Buttigieg would probably be somebody that they could groom to go in there. So I think, and Biden has said that he wants to turn it into the party of like a Buttigieg, so it would be just fitting for him.
All right, last question. You get to sit in the role of Biden's advisor and pick his vice president, and you can pick any politician in the country that I don't even have to have heard of the person. Any politician out there, who are you picking for Biden to run with?
Oh, wow. I would probably pick the senator from, and I can't remember his name right now, but the senator from West Virginia.
Oh, I have no idea. Who is
the one that voted yes on Kavanaugh. And it's a Democrat, the only Democrat that did.
I'm going to look this up because I want to know who this is. Must be Manchin because I've heard that name before.
Yeah,
Joe Manchin and Shelley
Yep.
Moore Capito are the two.
Yeah, Joe Manchin.
Huh. Interesting choice. I like that where that goes, though. Everybody else that's answered that question so far has said somebody that's either a light Republican or a libertarian. Kokesh said that he would nominate himself.
Well, yeah, that would I could see that. It's just because like I said, they painted Biden as this moderate, and now Biden's kind of trying to lurch to the left a little bit to satisfy the progressive base. And I think it's just somebody from a red area that could take some of the votes from like Virginia and surrounding areas and kind of keep those things safe. Whitmer's kind of, depending on the COVID response, Whitmer could become pretty unpopular. So it's just going to be, I think Manchin's a more safe choice.
All right, let's see what the live chat had to say between topics here. Generational Gap says heroes need weed. Seawall says Justin who. Ron says, I think Amash is an opportunist. Generational Gap says, I'll harden your base. He's throwing that back at me because I do that to them all the time.
I see.
Generational Gap says, how does anyone think they can win an election by being libertarian? Fool's errand. Well, if they didn't try, then we wouldn't have a libertarian party, which I don't understand why they just keep going for the presidency over and over again, and why they don't start from the bottom and start working their way up.
That would be smart.
Let's see. Sewell says, Rand Trump 2024, Don Jr. Generational Gap says, Ivanka and Jr. will be the next in line. God, no. God help us, no. One thing I can't stand is hereditary politics. We got to stop that shit.
Yeah.
Harvey
Good old
said,
nepotism.
yeah, that was the word I was looking for, and I couldn't think of it. Harvey McLeod says, or Dan Crenshaw. We talked about that. Generational Gap says, does Ivanka count as getting another Bush? Let's see. Ron says, Dan learned nothing from being in combat. Another McCain warmonger. Yeah, he could be another Bush. I could see that, but...
Yeah, I can see that too, actually.
Then Ron is putting his chickens to bed, so he'll be back in a little bit later here. And with that, we're going to move on and talk about Obamagate. So the first thing that we have to say is that a document was declassified. It was put out, I believe, by Rand Paul earlier on this week that showed the names of several people who were involved in the decision to go forward with investigating and unmasking General Flynn as the person who was on the phone call that they were monitoring for intelligence because it was with Russian. Several prominent people were on the list, including Comey, Obama's chief of staff, whose name escapes me right now, the National Security Advisor, and Joe Biden were on this list. Now, at this point, the evidence is still showing that it's not showing that he doesn't know anything about it, but the evidence is not clear that he does know anything about this. But given the names of the people that were on the list, it's fair to say that there's a better than 75% chance that he knew. And we could possibly move beyond reasonable doubt, but very carefully at this point. But did you see this document? I thought I had it on the stack, and I guess I forgot to put it on there. But did you see this document at all?
I didn't see the document, but I saw some of the names involved, and yeah, Biden was one of them. I did see that.
So, do you think Obama knew?
Probably, yeah. I do. I mean, I think that I think it was probably maybe small fish to him, rather than, probably didn't think at the time it was gonna, become anything. But I do think that he, probably passively knew.
So you don't think necessarily this was a malicious attempt by Obama himself to get up onto this, but just kind of some other people involved that kind of knew what was going on?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was like a lower level kind of a thing where he was aware, but not really. I don't think he knew that it was going to come out like this. So I don't think he foresaw that.
So with that in mind here, it looks like Trump has requested that, let me see if I can find the article that went along with this. On-air production, gotta love it. All right. Yeah, Lindsey Graham is getting on with this too, which is really uneasy. This is the article I read on Contemporary last week on this. This was from Fox News. God, I use them way too much. I got to stop using them so much because they're just as toxic as everybody else. And they make me turn off my ad blocker. Bastards. I hate that. But from Fox News, Trump calls for Obama testimony amid unmasking controversy. Graham cooled new idea.
And ask you about General.
Yeah, and then they play a video right in the beginning too, and then it bleeds over onto everything. President Trump on Thursday pressed Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Lindsey Graham to call former President Barack Obama to testify amid new developments surrounding the origins of the Russia investigation and efforts at the time to unmask Michael Flynn's name in the intelligence reports. He goes on, if I were a senator or a congressman, the first person I would call to testify about the biggest political crime and scandal in the history of the U.S. by far is former President Obama, Trump tweeted Thursday. He knew everything. So, Graham has come out pretty handily and said that we're not going to prosecute a sitting president. We have no precedent to do that, and we really don't have the evidence to do so. And a lot of people on Twitter are calling for Graham's head right now. Where do you stand on that idea?
Generally, if everybody on Twitter is wanting something, I'm usually pretty skeptical of it. But what I don't know that. I mean, they're saying that what Graham knew of the testimony. That's what they're saying in essence.
Yeah, on Twitter they are definitely.
Yeah,
It's the usual Graham anger. Graham's a traitor. Graham did this. Graham did that. Graham is in the pocket of Democrats. When he says something that is anti-Trump, that's usually the lines that they go with. And when he says something pro-Trump, he's their hero again.
Yeah, I mean, I think that he's being somewhat objective in the sense of he just wants to know more information. I don't know. Like I said, I think that people relying on Graham's testimony is going to be, you're always going to be disappointed if you're a Trump super fan. You're always going to be happy if you're, against him, and you're going to be one of those liberals that are saying, "Oh, even Republican Lindsey Graham, even he's saying this." It, just
yeah, we get a lot of that.
Mm-hmm. So
we definitely get a lot of that out of this. But what do you think about the idea of actually breaking precedent or setting a new precedent and prosecuting a former president, because that again that's something that's never been done in the history of this country? Do you think it's a possibility if the evidence comes in? What would be even the process behind it?
I mean I don't think they'll do it. I think it would ultimately come to another line of similar to how it was with the impeachment. I think that they'll vote to acquit. I think that some Republicans would cross over and vote to acquit a former sitting president. So I don't think that going through the motions of doing it is going to yield anything, but it might damage the Republican Party. So, I mean, is it objectively something that they could do that would be a problem? No, I don't think it's a problem. I think it's something that they could do, but is it strategically a good idea? I don't think so.
That does raise an interesting question, because you did bring up the fact that the Senate would be involved in this, in the House. One of the questions and one of the things I'm most curious about the idea of if this could happen, and not necessarily that it would happen to Obama, but that it would happen in the future, but does a former sitting president get tried as a private citizen, or does he get tried as a president, like as through the impeachment? Because that would be an interesting way to look at that, and especially given what the Southern District of New York wants to do to Trump at this point, that would be the same thing. We would get an answer on that very quickly if he doesn't make it out of office, because SDNY wants to press charges on him for some sort of tax evasion almost immediately at this point, and we will see what happens. Does he get tried as a private citizen or as a president?
I think you get tried as a public official. I mean, he still has protections under the government that he gains as a benefit. So I think you get tried as a public official.
That's curious, because once you're out of the office, you are at that point you're a private citizen. So that's definitely something we could see defined out of this administration. We see a lot of stuff defined out of this administration. You notice that? A lot of stuff goes to the Supreme Court, and a lot of stuff that was in gray areas is suddenly we've got a black and white decision on it.
Yep. I do. I personally like it for the most part, but yeah, I do. I like the transparency.
So the other big news that came up out of Obamagate this past week is the fact that Judge Edward Sullivan, a district court judge over in Washington D.C. has called for an amicus curiae and to bring an outside judge, a man named John Gleeson, back in to decide whether or not they actually will respect the Justice Department's dismissal of the Flynn case. To rehash what's happened here, William Barr has decided to dismiss the case against Michael Flynn. And now a district court is saying, no, you can't do that. And now we may go to him for perjury as well at this point because he lied under oath when he took the plea deal. And that's going to be an interesting one to see because if the case is dismissed, I think that falls under double jeopardy law. What do you think on this one?
Oh, I mean, I think first of all, the district court just wants to basically, again, just make it known that, Orange Man bad, we need to do this. We need to prosecute Flynn and whatnot. But the thing is that I absolutely also believe that it is double jeopardy for that. Like you can't try someone twice for the same case. If it was thrown out, it was thrown out. It wasn't dismissed without prejudice. It was dismissed officially. So, if you want to, I don't think you can appeal that, but that would be the process for that, not for a court that's on the same level to kind of come in and make their own rules.
And the biggest thing that I've taken out of this, of course, is the fact that once again, like everything else, this goes along with constitutional lines, it goes along gray areas, but it also, one of the things I've always brought back and forth with this is the fact that a lot of what's happening with things like Trump and his tax returns, for instance, the fact that they want to subpoena him without an actual indictment going along with it, or Kavanaugh and his mock trial that he had in the Senate over at the Blasey Ford thing, and what's going on with Michael Flynn right now, among many, many other things that we're seeing with this, is the fact that Democrats especially, but the legal system and everything else is going after these people, sidestepping many of these amendments and protections that we have with people that have means and people that have allies in the government. What do you think they're going to do once this gets down to yours and my level? When one of us wants, or they want to talk to one of us for speaking out against the government or any other thing that they could drum up on us at this point.
The thing is that it's usually about authoritarianism with speech. If you see someone that's trying to silence someone, usually there's something that they don't want said, or they will call it offensive or misinformation or whatnot. And the thing is that the way that you ultimately defeat misinformation and all of that is with more information, is with better information, is you let that person speak and then you clobber them in a debate, or you clobber them in by just speaking out what is true. So when you actually hide or try to censor a lot of people, you're just creating more interest in it, essentially. So it's very helpful that a lot of platforms, come forward now and try to basically tell, big tech, that there are, to tell people that are on big tech that there are more alternatives. I mean, YouTube's getting to a point where I saw somebody, for instance, try to, they did a drinking challenge or something on YouTube, and they pulled that off because they called it like self-harm, and the guy's like, yeah, but I've shot myself with tasers and stuff. Like, why is this one in particular, so YouTube's reaching out. And the thing is that the more that it's allowed, the easier it is for them to do. So what do I think of it? I mean, I think it's just going to be systemic. I think that it's going to continue to spread as long as people don't speak out against it, as long as there's not more voices coming up. And as the government and big tech becomes more authoritarian, the courts will definitely easily go along with that if they're so inclined. Because who's paying their salaries? Who's helping them? Well, bigger government's going to ultimately secure them more. So, yeah, I think that it's a very easy way to align.
And yeah, it's just once your Fourth and your Fifth Amendment rights get eroded away, they're not coming back. I mean, the Patriot Act got re-upped again this past week. I didn't even put that in the itinerary because I knew that I was going to go off on a 45-minute rant about that.
Yep. Yeah. Every president since Bush, and they always say we're going to end it, we're going to get rid of it, we're not, and then they just extend it. I mean, that was one of Obama's things that he ran on, was abolishing that, and then he said, nope, we need safety.
Oh, I like this. I like this very much better. I like the fact that I can look into these records and I can find what I need to do. And hey, you journalists, you can't write something bad about me. Hey, I've got your phone records without a warrant.
Yeah, and yet he ran against that platform. That was the funny thing. So
This is going to be crazy to see, and we're going to get a lot of definitions out of the end of this. Definitely going to get a lot of defined laws. Some of this is going to hit the Supreme Court, and we'll get these fabled precedents that seem to only go the left's way, like Roe versus Wade or something like that.
Yep. Well, the other thing too is like I mean, just with the big spending bill. Going back to that a little bit, it's a way for government to infect more aspects of life, because they're anytime they're going to give out loans or money or whatever, it's always going to be with strings. They're always going to want something back, and so not necessarily in the form of cash or interest or anything, but just in the form of we helped you out, now you scratch our back. So
it's funny. I said the exact same thing about my stimulus check. No money comes from the government without strings attached.
Exactly.
All right, let's check in with the live chat here, and we'll talk just briefly about Arbery. Hopefully just briefly about Arbery, but this could go all kinds of different directions. There's not a lot of new information in it, but the one that came out of this was pretty big. But let's see what these guys have to say. Elephant Man, how charming of you to start out with. Generational Gap went back and got prepped for their show, so as soon as we get out of here, we're going to go and check them. Elephant Man 007 comes in and leads off with, fuck you, Ed. Fuck you, Elephant Man. That's what I have to say to that.
Oh, nice.
And then he said he was just kidding, so see you soon. Yeah. Awesome. Ron Held says, rules for thee and none for me. Prosecute all these former presidents for war crimes. Yes, please. We definitely have W at this point.
Yeah. Yep.
Ron says, war, government-sanctioned murder. And it looks like Elephant Man and Ron are trying to out-sticker each other at this point.
Oh.
They're having a sticker war over there. Yeah, you can't see it over on Twitch, but they are definitely having a sticker war over here.
Fair enough.
All right, let's just you keep hitting the stickers, you guys, because that's going to fill the chest more, because that generates more lemons, and we're going to open the chest on the outro. So keep throwing those stickers out there. All right, and surprise, surprise, I have another article from Fox News. So this week in Fox News, this was from a day ago, but this is probably one of the biggest things that developed in this case. Ahmaud Arbery case. Text suggests Georgia police... Go away. I don't want to turn my ad blocker off. Enlisted help from suspect months before shooting, report says. And we'll read just a little bit into this. I read this morning, but we'll read a little bit into this. New text messages suggest police may have informally deputized one of the suspects in the shooting death of Ahmaud Arbery, while protesters demand the resignation of Georgia prosecutors for mishandling the investigation. That is information that we all know on this already, that he was jogging and got shot and everything. But back into the meat of things, text messages first obtained by the Atlanta Journal-Constitution show an exchange between police and a private citizen concerning a private construction site located a block away from where Arbery was shot. It's the same construction site where Arbery was seen on surveillance footage before his death. That is still not confirmed, by the way. So it looks like the owner of the property, from what I read this morning and from what I read off this now, reached out to police in December about trespassers, and the police said that, hey, Greg McMichael lives right in your area. Why don't you just call him? Even though McMichael was retired, which is dangerous in every level out of everything else out of this. But did you see anything on this at all?
Actually, I was reading an article from CNN, and I was seeing that there was a release of the surveillance videos that they trespassed. There were multiple people, including Arbery, that trespassed. It looks like on Larry English's home, and of course, Arbery was the only one killed, but he was the only one in that video. So that's the information that I read on it. That was new. I haven't been following the case too closely, just because if it wasn't, I'm sorry to say this, but if it wasn't white men killing a black man, it probably wouldn't have made national headlines.
Right.
And so I give it the same, coverage that I would give to, the opposite happening, or any in racial murders happening. I mean, it's like I said, this wouldn't have probably garnered national headlines, but for race. But that's what I've seen on it.
Well, the text message thing and the fact that the police urged Mr. English to reach out to Mr. McMichael at this point, that changes a lot of things. Because at this point, like it said in the beginning of the article, he was informally deputized, and no, he doesn't have the authority to make any sort of arrest at this point, much less use deadly force in an arrest. And the thing with the citizen's arrest is, yes, I understand that it's a thing and everything, but you actually have to be witnessing the crime. There can't be any hearsay out of this. So,
yeah.
But the fact that, yes, the police said, okay, well, go reach out to this guy, that opens the door for a lot of the corruption that I think a lot of people were seeing out of this. And honestly, I said in the beginning I didn't think this was going to be a national story or should be a national story, but this one little detail changed that in my mind. That does make this a national story, because this is the police corruption, and I think all police departments need to be investigating at this point, checking in their own ranks to make sure that they don't have shit like this going on themselves, or the citizens need to be held or hold the police departments accountable for it.
Oh, I mean, I think that should just be a normal part of self-review. The thing is that any authoritarianism always breeds corruption, because you're essentially going unchecked in power. So as long as it's small enough, as long as a police department isn't doing certain things like taking some of the drugs that they take from a dealer, and then reselling them themselves. I mean, those are stories that we hear about once in a while, but that happens because nobody's really checking on them. Nobody's really, looking into them as hard as, so this police department did happen to get caught, and, in this case, which makes it a little bit more of the eye on them. But I'm not surprised that something like this is happening.
Yeah, that's understandable. Absolutely. I do want to see what this happens. Now, there was an idea that actually came up. I was listening to another Freedom Scoop, well, not officially sanctioned Freedom Scoop podcast yet, but somebody who's about to get brought in. Jessica Green had Tweets by Brit over on her show this past week, and they were talking about anarchism versus minarchism. And I do believe that the people need to be holding the police accountable, but what if there was a sort of non-government agency that went through and investigated and certified these police agencies? Could we find a way to non-corrupt them at some point, and could we actually form something like that? And she brought up UL as an example, Underwriters Laboratories, who are not sanctioned by any government, but anybody who makes any sort of electrical equipment. I mean, you pick up any piece of electronics within reach. I'm sure I would have to pick it up, but I'm sure that my Phantom Power over here has got the UL logo on it. But that anybody who makes electronics wants to have that logo. Absolutely, they go out of their way to try and get that logo on everything. They go out of their way to get certified by UL. And as far as I know, and as far as anybody else knows, UL is not corrupted by anything. But with the police department and government involvement, I do think that that does open the door for corruption and payoffs as well. But what do you think about that idea?
I think that's hard to implement. It would have to be funded on a national and smaller local levels. It's hard to do that. Really, the only way that you can really non-corrupt a facility like that, in my opinion, is to draft, and volunteer people basically for mandatory service, which to me, is not something that I would want to get into. It's just hard to find funding for a group like that, I would say, and then to essentially rely on a non-government but non-bias type of organization. I think it would be really hard to combine both of those things, especially if depending on where their funding comes from, because they're always going to be loyal to whoever funds them. So if you've got someone like who is advocating this project like Soros that is funding them, well, there's your corruption,
Yeah, absolutely.
so it really just depends how it's done. And I wouldn't want to start another tax for it, because that's essentially how it would have to be. It would have to be like a citizen's tax. And so I think the idea would have to be fleshed out a little bit more.
Well, and I know that when Jessica was talking about, she was talking about it from an anarchist perspective, for which that meant that there was no government-sanctioned police, that there was private police, because that's the way that anarchists do things. But these police departments would then have to go out and seek out to have to keep themselves clean enough to get this certification from a third party outside of the area.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, bringing it in against the state agency does open the door for something that is a bit more corrupt. And the government has unlimited amounts of your money. You just don't know it yet.
Yeah. Yep. No. That's what I would ultimately wonder about, is what would you do in order to prevent corruption, because it's going to be run by humans essentially, and to palm someone off to certify you. There is organized crime out there too that can easily make a difference with bundles of cash. So it just depends. Really just depends.
Yeah, it's just that time. Like you said, organized crime. I'll just keep laying $100 bills down until you're ready to look the other way, and you tell me when to stop.
Exactly.
I am probably 2 hours away from Chicago, and even still today, a lot of that goes on down there.
Yep, it goes on in Detroit too. I know about it firsthand. So,
all right. Unless you have anything else, we are going to step away from the Arbery case then on this, because we're going to wait for more developments and possibly some pretrial stuff that's going on here. Let's check in with the live chat. Let's see what they've got to say out of this. Let's go to all these stickers. I can't see where everybody else was chatting here. I know that Seawall was up in here a little bit before. And he had some points, but I got to sort through stickers to get there. Man, you guys have a lot of stickers. They're all entertaining, but man, you guys have a lot of stickers. Seawall says, Arbery was running from a felony under reasonable suspicion, which stripped him of self-defense rights. Under Georgia law, that is incorrect, and opened him up to a citizen's arrest, also incorrect under Georgia law. That is a state-to-state thing, and I've read the Georgia state law, and that is not correct for state law. That actually may be correct for Texas law. I'd have to read Texas law, but not for Georgia law. He attacked someone, he got shot for it. That is shady under Georgia law. Seawall says we don't know he was jogging. Elephant Man's got a Tulsi Gabbard sticker. I almost want to sign into DLive just so I can steal that one. I have a slot that I want to replace. Seawall says he was seen walking and then ran when someone confronted him while on 911. They haven't confirmed if there were other... All we know, if there was a black man that matches Aubrey's description. Right, yeah, no, there's not enough evidence to call that a felony at this point. Elephant Man says, okay, I'm done with this. Thanks, Ron. The sticker war is over. Yes, 26ers is not enough. Heading over to the tubes for GG. Hey, they're on D Live too, Elephant Man. Just remember that. Ron says, Ed is popping the chest in a bit. Yes, I'll be doing that during the outro. He had every right to make the citizens, and their standard is reasonable suspicion, which is the standard for citizens' arrest. No, under Georgia law, that is not. Under U.S. law, reasonable suspicion is running from a high crime area. Let's see. Yeah, opening the chest. Yeah, we'll be doing that during the outro. Then we've got Bursa Spore 161616, a new face in here. Says hello in capital letters. Ron says hi, and we will check back in after the last topic here. So the last topic that I have here comes from CNN. 3 Connecticut high school girls are suing over a policy that allows trans athletes to compete in girls' sports. 3 Connecticut high school girls, represented by their mothers, have filed a lawsuit over a policy which allows transgender athletes to participate in sports based on their gender identity. Selena Soul, Chelsea Mitchell, Alana Smith, and their mothers claim in their lawsuit that Connecticut Interscholastic Athletic Conference's policy is a violation of the Title IX Act, which bars discrimination on the basis of sex. The policy, they say, in suit results in boys displacing girls in competitive track events in Connecticut. CIAC said in a statement after the lawsuit that the policy was implemented in 2013 as compliant with both state and federal law. In a statement earlier this week, the ACLU said it would seek to join the lawsuit to defend the interests of the transgender student athletes. So, have you read anything on this one so far?
I think I read the same article that you're reading.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, what are you taking away out of this?
I took away that I thought. I mean, I side with the mothers on this. You know, trans people, like I have no problem with people, you know, being trans, and it's a very, very difficult thing. I come from an era in that community. I come from an era, you know, well, let me say in the community where it was very much a leave us alone, we'll leave you alone. And it kind of grew from there. And the thing is that a lot of people are just not told no. So, you know, they get really upset and they think you're being transphobic, and they think that when you point out some, you know, physical attributes in something is unfair, that, you know, that they, you know, we should just acquiesce to their demands and just continue to, you know, appease them. And the thing is that you have to, like, one thing that I want to tell them is, like, okay, you know, I understand that it's very difficult for you to have gender dysphoria. It's very difficult for you to feel that you're, you know, born in a body that you don't belong to. And there's a lot of compassion that I have for that. It only goes as far as helping them live and helping them live the fullest lives that they can without infringing on other people's rights, though. Mm-hmm. So in this case, you have athletes that, you know, are girls that are trying their hardest, that just don't have the physical capabilities that, you know, these trans athletes are going to have. You know, the trans athletes on the other side, you know, they're not, you know, if they're taking hormone blockers or whatnot, they're not going to have the capabilities that, you know, that I guess the cis males their age would have. And so I have to side with the mothers on this and say, you know, I agree that, you know, unfortunately, you know, we want you to be productive, and we want you to, you know, be wonderful members of society. We just don't want you playing in sports against people. And because of this disorder that you have, that you feel that you need to be, I'm probably going to get fragged for calling it a disorder, but, you know, gender dysphoria is that. Because of that, there are certain limitations you're going to have. Just like if you were born a paralytic, if you were born, you know, with one leg, if you know, all of these things are going to prevent you from competing in certain areas, and mm-hmm. This is one of them. So, well,
and that's just it too. I mean, even if they're taking the hormone blockers biologically, they still have, you know, they may not have the parts downstairs anymore, depending on whether they had the surgery or not. But biologically, they still have a lot of their male parts, including larger lungs, a larger heart, denser muscle mass, all these things that are leading to the reason that we have Title IX and we have separated sports to begin with. Yes, I
Mm-hmm.
do. I understand and respect the fact that they want to live their life in the best way that they possibly can, but I mean, they're taking some of these records and they're not doing it by a small amount,
Right.
which is displacing, like you said, it's displacing girls from being able to compete to have some of these scholarships. And I think somebody in the live chat actually said easy scholarships. Yeah, once you have
Mm-hmm.
a, even if it is, the woman is living in a body that isn't clearly hers, like you had said, it still has the physical advantages of the body that it doesn't fit in. And I don't know how you square that circle. But the easiest way that I can see to square that circle is to not have them compete against women.
No, I completely agree, and it's unfortunate that we don't. I mean, like it's tricky to say this because it's like it's fortunate in a sense that we don't have a lot of people with gender dysphoria, but it's unfortunate in a sense that there's not enough people that we can create even a small league. I mean, I'm sure there can be like a national league or something, but even a small league of transgender athletes that can compete in the sports that they want to compete in. So it's unfortunate and it's sad, but that is the solution that I believe that they should be lobbying for, is to create a new designation under Title IX that includes them. Not to say, I was male, now now I'm a female. I've chosen to be a female, or I feel that I'm female, however you want to word it, and I need to compete with them, because it's just unfair, and it's unfair for females that are transitioning to males as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I guess I don't know how the biology works on that because I've never really looked into it, but I would think that a woman taking testosterone would be in a similar advantageous state against females because the developments would be changing and whatnot, and she'd probably have a bit denser of a muscle mass because of the testosterone. But on the other side of that, she wouldn't have the capability to stand up with the males, so she'd be above female but below male at that point,
Mm-hmm.
performance wise, of course.
Right. Absolutely.
So one of the interesting developments that came out of this article, and this was pointed out by everybody on the Daily Wire, pretty much on the same day, was the fact that the judge in the case ordered the plaintiff's attorneys to refer to the defendants as women. They weren't allowed to say transgender women. They weren't allowed to say men. They could only say women, which turns this case in an interesting twist because now all of the briefs are going to say women competing against women. Where do you see on that?
Well, I think it's a play on words. I mean, when you control the vocabulary, you control the population essentially.
That's a very Orwellian way to say it.
Yeah. And the thing is that you've already seen what's going, like, why are what legally makes them women? Did they change their IDs, or what happened? If they changed their IDs and they are legally women, then I guess I can see that. Them being in high school, I don't know that happened. So you have to kind of refer to it as it is, and it might be uncomfortable for them. I get it. I get that it's uncomfortable, but you have to live through some uncomfortable things, in life. And if I don't see a justification for it, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Right, other than just, and I'm sure that, I mean, Connecticut, I've talked to the Common Sense American before, who's up from Connecticut, and he's very vocal about the leftward bent of his state. So I do think that it is a play on words to get a desired outcome out of this. I think you're absolutely right, and you hit the nail on the head with that one. Because, I mean, okay, you look at a court briefing and you say, okay, these three women are suing these three transgender women, even to put it in those terms, because the sports are unfair. Whereas you look in the brief, down the road and it's okay, these 3 women are suing these 2 women because the sports are unfair. I mean, that paints a completely different picture when you look at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So my last question on this, and this will be the last question that I have for you news-wise on this, is going to be, what do you think? Where do you think the outcome lands on this court case?
Given the information that's going into it, if they're being ordered to, I think that the outcome is going to come down on the side of the transgender athletes. There will maybe be an appeal, so I think it's gonna go up a little higher. But
You think it hits the Supreme Court?
I don't know. There might be one appeal. I don't know that it would actually get to the Supreme Court, though.
Well, that would be interesting if it hit the Supreme Court, because then it will actually have, and I actually put this in the itinerary, that what this would do to national attention on all of this. And if it hit the Supreme Court, then this would actually be something that would be nationally decided at that point.
Mm-hmm.
This could affect things well outside of Connecticut and well outside of the district court of the area. I mean, we could start seeing decisions, and I hate to say it, but decisions out of Connecticut affecting things that happen in Utah or something like that.
Right. Yeah. I think a case will eventually hit the Supreme Court. I don't know that it'll be this one, but I think one will eventually, and I don't think it's too far off. So we'll see.
All right, and that is going to wrap it up for news here. We're going to check in with the live chat for the last time tonight, so thanks everybody for coming in and getting your chat in. As soon as we're done reading the live chat here, we'll go through the outro and ask Kevin the last question we have to ask Kevin, and I'm going to hit the live chat, or the chest rather, while he's answering, so everybody on DLive, get ready to go and scramble for those lemons here. So from where we go here, Oni Street says hashtag easy scholarships. And that's been a concern from all of this from the beginning, is the fact that people are going out to try and, because they're smashing records, of course, they're looking for the scholarships to get out into that. Seawall says the true trans athletes are not on blockers; they are biologically fully male. I guess I didn't look that far into their medical history, so I don't know that. But that I have heard stories about that coming out of colleges, where people that are just straight up men are saying, "Okay, I'm women," and I am woman, hear me roar, and then getting out there and just smashing and shattering these records without any sort of transition going on. McConnell Smuggles Coke is in here. Welcome on in. Says, elites, here's the new degeneracy. Normalize it within your community so no one raises to power and challenges my rule. I could see that. Elephant Man says, since the lockdown, I haven't seen any articles covering this topic. Yeah, it just showed up. This particular suit just showed up this past week. So it just hit the news for the first time. McConnell smokes. That's funny. Injecting steroids into a woman turns her into a man, but a lifetime of estrogen from BPA, soy, low T, turns men into beta, then cucks, then into liberals. I like that. Ron Helton says, they feel like a woman, so there. That somehow doesn't translate to race, though, like that one woman who said she was black. I believe he is talking about Rachel Dolezal. Elephant Man says, we can't yet change those chromosomes, so a man is a man. Ron Helton says, yep, and that is going to be the last on-air live chat for the night, so thanks everybody for coming out and chatting. And for you, Kevin, I've got one last question for you, as we always ask at the end of this. So I want you to tell us about a hobby that you have that has nothing to do with work or politics. It could be an album that you picked up, an instrument you like to play, or a video game that you like to play, just something that helps you unwind at the end of the day. And while you're answering that, we're going to open the chest. So get ready to scramble, everyone on DLive. Go ahead.
All right. Well, good luck, everybody on DLive, by the way. I am into poker, actually. I've been playing poker for since I was 18, so 16 years, I guess. Just casually for fun, but I do enjoy it. I've played in a few tournaments. I haven't played in the WSOP yet, but yeah, I hope to one day. But until then, I just do it on the side, and I play. The other interesting thing is I don't play Hold'em. A lot of people think that might be what I play, but I don't. I do play it occasionally, but not that's not my main game. My main game is Omaha High-Low. So I enjoy that quite a bit. As you all know from the beginning, I like to speedrun video games too. So both of those things. And then I like karaoke. So those three things are what I really enjoy.
Yeah, actually, I was gonna ask that off camera, but I did notice that your Twitch picture is cards. So,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
well, thanks for coming by here, and I do want to thank everybody who came in and chatted in the live chat, everybody who's been here from the beginning, and everyone who showed up at the end. If you want to finish the conversation with me, you can find me over on Twitter. That is at EdsBlog Twitter, with a one in place of the I. We always want to direct people over there when we can, because that gets people from dissenting opinions a chance to come in and try to rebut. They don't really do very well, but they come in and try anyway. So go and check me out there. If you want to find anything else, it's in the description below or above if you're on Facebook. You can find me on any of those locations, and we can finish the conversation. If you want to finish the conversation with my guest, Kevin, tell us where they can find you.
Mine's pretty easy, just twitch.tv/Silentcaster, or I have a Twitter and I'm Silentcaster on there as well. So, and that's Silentcaster with a K. Mm-hmm. So.
And that is linked in the description below, so go ahead and check that out. Once again, thanks everybody who came and checked us out. If you're watching over on YouTube or DLive or Twitch right now and you're not already subscribed, go ahead and hit that follow button or subscribe button depending on your platform and check us out over there. Hit that like button as well. Show us your love, and that helps tell people on YouTube. It helps overcome the algorithms. It doesn't do very well, but it does help. And if you're just catching up now, you can catch up with us on the go. You can find us on demand on YouTube and over on BitChute.com, or you can find us on the audio platforms, iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. Remember, if you're on iTunes, leave us that 5-star rating and a good review. That always helps us move up the charts. And if you want even more content and you want to see more of the back catalog without going to one of those other sites, you can find all of my back catalog, including the back catalogs for The Generational Gap, Wyatt Birkenhoff, The Already Conservative, Freckles and Britt, and Stephen Ignoramus, all over conveniently on freedomscoop.com, where you can also check out our merch, buy our sweatshirts, buy our mugs, buy t-shirts, buy all kinds of stuff that we have out there. And we've got even more stuff coming to the merch shop, so go and check us out over there. Lastly, on this show, the last thing we always say is never take the words of bloggers, podcasters, or journalists as gospel. Find all the facts and draw your own conclusions. Kevin, why don't you give us the last word?
Well, thank you first for having me. I definitely appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun and very informative as well. Kind of new to this, so appreciate y'all indulging me and being kind to me. And I would say have fun, enjoy life, and don't let the coronavirus win. Just keep living to the best of your days.
Take care, everyone.